My name is Lissette Calderon. I'm the founder and CEO of Neo. We're a vertically integrated, lifestyle-oriented multifamily developer. We specialize primarily in urban infill areas. We're known for the Miami River, the Renaissance of Allapattah, more recently the Palmer Lake District, and now outside of South Florida. That being said, we have a portfolio of about 1,200 units. 700 units are opening up in the first quarter of 24. And we have another 1,350 right now going into permitting, and about 2,000 in the pipeline. So it's a great time to be in Florida.
And Jenny?
Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you so much, Lissette. It's an honor to be with you. I'm Jenny Bernell. I founded Clearline Real Estate about 2.5 years ago. Since I started, I have about 1,200 units, ground-up multifamily in my pipeline, and all of it is located in the Wynwood area of Miami. So excited to share a little bit more. The three main projects I have underway are located at 2000 North Miami Avenue, about 300 units, 1550 Northeast Miami Place, 427 units, and Irby Miami, which is about 300 units, located at the Wynwood Brightline Station. So excited to be here today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, and thank you both. So I'm going to kick it off with a question about rent growth and occupancy. We're seeing rent growth slow. Occupancy is ticking up across South Florida. Do you see these trends continuing, and to what extent? Whoever wants to take it first.
Sure, I'll take it. You know, we obviously are seeing a stabilization in the market, and we're seeing, some kind of normalcy.
Lissette, I'm sorry, can you get a close?
Oh, can you hear me better now? Sorry. Okay, as I was saying, you're seeing some stabilization in the market. But I think what you really need to do is step back and think about really what happened. What happened in 2020, 21, 22 is really an outlier. Historically, prior to 2020, the 5-year rent growth was about 2.5%. In 2020, in the pandemic, it was kind of flatlined. It was about 0.8. In 21, we had a 15% rent growth. That was compared to 10% in the nation. So again, there was this incredible rent growth in 21. In 22, you had 8%. This year, we've seen a flattening, but if you really take about that, it goes back. And then projecting forward, they're talking about 3 to 4%. So when you think about, you know, is it that rents are declining and you're seeing all these stories, it's not necessarily that they're declining, or are we just going back to normal? And that's what I would talk about. Are we just going back to a regular normal, a regular stabilized market? And same thing with vacancy rates. You know, traditionally, vacancy rents were about 6%. They crept up at the height of the pandemic, then they went down 4% when all these people came in. And now we've crept up to about 5%, and you know, they're looking at 6%. So when you're thinking about vacancy rents, again, you know, vacancy and rents, it really is just going back to normal, is my perspective.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I think, you know, we all have been talking a lot about the affordability problem in terms of housing in Miami. And one thing in terms of, you know, my general concept coming into Miami is to really build apartments that are affordable with a lowercase a for a young professional demographic that is, you know, now, you know, a part of the cultural fabric of Miami. And really starting to balance out some of the affordability issues. And I think some of the vacancy problems really just stem from the fact that so many different projects are now having, you know, construction boosts in prices, things like that, which, you know, which force people out. But ultimately, I think both of us are really adding to the more affordable end, that type of stock, which is an exciting new development for Miami, which it really much needs to complement all of the luxury housing that's happening.
Lisa, you said that it's kind of going back to normal. So what is the, not to overuse this term, but the new normal, will it go back to pre-pandemic rents, or are you kind of seeing it just kind of stabilize?
You know, I don't really see us going back to pre-pandemic rents. I do expect to see a certain kind of normalcy and just kind of stabilization in that rent growth. When you think of some of the submarkets that traditionally hadn't been very popular, whether it was suburban markets or some of the kind of new infill submarkets, they've had incredible rent growth because there's this flight to affordability. So you've seen that happen. Then on the 4 and 5 star, what's traditionally associated with typical apartments, what you're seeing there continues to be pressure on that rental price point. Why? Because home prices continue to be extremely high, and unfortunately, mortgage rates are also extremely high. When you think about kind of where 30-year mortgage rates were pre-pandemic, they were, for the prior 5 years, they were about 4%. Pandemic, they went down to about 2%, the 30-year fixed. People either refinanced, bought new homes. In 2022, you started seeing this uptick. What happens 23? 30 years have gone almost up to 8%. We're at a 20-year high. So unfortunately, people that would have bought homes, that would have moved, are staying in rental. So that is why, while I don't see incredible rent growth, I do see some stability in the markets.
Yeah, I think given the turbulence in the market and the amount of delayed starts, in spite of the fact that there's a lot of product coming online early next year, there should be some great time for a recovery so that when we deliver our projects in 26, I think we should be in a good place.
You both mentioned affordability. I do also want to touch on affordable housing. Florida lawmakers earlier this year passed the Live Local Act, which creates density and height incentives for developers who incorporate workforce and affordable into their projects. Have you considered it? Can you talk a little bit about what your experience has been?
Sure, I'm happy to take it. I believe strongly as a developer about doing well and doing good, and affordability is a large part of that. So when I first heard about Live Local Law, I was actually extremely excited in hearing about it at first from GT. However, there are some challenges. For me, in evaluating my sites, I mean, we all know that taller means more expensive. So, although it seems like it could be better, ultimately building beyond 12 stories it just adds a lot to the price tag. I think, secondly, more units used to be deemed better. In this debt environment, I think we all approach it a little differently. My 310 units in Wynwood are actually the right size to be going out to the debt market right now. If I wanted to boost it to 500, 600, the loan goes up significantly. Don't know how it would be looked upon. And then I think thirdly, there is a major gap between Live Local Law and some of the zoning in Miami. For instance, at 1550 Northeast Miami Place, we're in a T24A zone where we're actually constrained by FLR, so it really doesn't do anything for us. So I really do believe that it's a great concept, but it needs to get married more with the actual zoning regulations.
Do you have anything to add, Lisa?
Well, I'm very excited by Live Local, although we don't have any project right now that's in Live Local. I believe as developers, as city leaders, as leaders within our community, we have an obligation to make sure that the Miami workforce continues to stay in Miami. And people and the kids that are graduating from college are able to continue to call home. We premised our company on that. We're proud of being an attainable luxury developer, as we like to say. We like to do it at a price point where it's for the working professionals and paraprofessionals of the city. And what I'm excited by Live Local is that it gives us another tool to try to explore how else can we continue to bring attainable luxury. And I think the best projects are really done when it's done in a public and private collaboration. I don't think we as developers can answer every affordable housing issue, and I don't think the government is able to answer every affordable housing issue. So that's why I'm excited about Live Local and the collaboration that it brings.
How is you touched on this a little bit, how is the market for debt, construction financing? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, I feel blessed more than ever to be a multifamily developer and not any other type at this moment in time. Although, there are definitely more challenges and more scrutiny by banks, by debt funds, I think that the deals are still getting done so long as you haven't underwritten and re-underwritten and re-underwritten to continue to try to go more and more luxury or to boost your rents to unrealistic levels to make other factors pencil. But I think we're blessed to be in Miami, and I think that there is a large amount of money that has been, maybe they're late to the game, maybe they want to add more, to Miami. But I think that it's really become a cultural city to a whole other extent, as Lissette alluded to. So I think that the attraction is surely there. My reception has been, really, really good. So excited to get on the ground.
What about you, Lissette?
There's no question that it's definitely a different lending environment than it was probably in 21, 22. But good projects done by good sponsors that make sense, that pencil to today, not to theoretical numbers, continue to be done. Your cap stack will, of course, look a little bit different. Your leverage will probably be lower. You'll have to put more cash in the deal. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That allows for longevity. I personally just closed an operating project, a long-term debt on that operating project. And I have to tell you, we went through more scrutiny and more hoops than I could have ever imagined. We ultimately closed it. But really, what is it coming down to? It's coming down to, the markets are based off of the treasuries. And, where you had 4% treasuries, they went down to 2%. And, now treasuries are climbing back up again. And really kind of the markets follow that so much, the loans, the 30-year fix follows that. And, the reality is, so does the investment market. So when you're penciling out your construction loan that's really following this, all of a sudden your interest number just got that much higher. And in speaking to the units, how many you're billed, and that's why the sweet spot in the underwriting, how long can you hold this interest reserve before you have an operating project paying this down? So there is a lot of, moving parts to it, but I do believe, look, everybody wants to come to Miami. We all just read that Jeff Bezos decided to make this his home, last week. So, I mean, who doesn't want to be in Miami? It's a wonderful place.
One thing I would add is, the debt market is one thing. I think, one thing I would say is I feel very blessed to have raised my equity on all my deals back in 21, 22, because it was a very different environment. I think so many of us, my previous employers would oftentimes wait until the very 11th hour to place the full capital stack. And I think that an environment like now proves that can be a bit unwise. So, I think that gives a boost to things.
How has the cost of insurance affected your projects?
I'm so sorry, I couldn't hear.
Insurance, how has it affected your projects?
Insurance is high. The deals still underwrite. What I do find is my projects are usually a bit different than some of the ones that are experiencing the worst insurance impacts, which are really the the waterfront, not the flood zone X properties. There is a significant boost, but my units are small. They have a lot of units, so when you amortize it over the number of units, it's a couple $100, but it doesn't kill the projects.
Yeah, it still works.
In our experience, through no fault of ours, we've seen insurance go up about 30% in our portfolio. And that starts becoming a big number. We're seeing that on the construction side. Builder's risk also continues to go up, but builder's risk is also a function of what are your construction costs doing. So that's a double hit there. But again, you just continue to underwrite them and so forth. In terms of passing it through, which is always a question that's asked, are you able to pass this through? The reality is,
I pass it to the tenants.
To the tenants.
Yeah.
I can't pass it to the tenants. Those are uncontrollable expenses, and at the end of the day, the rent is really set by the market. I can't go and really pass that through. So the only way that I can make up for these insurance increases is that I have to have operational efficiencies, and we have to do that through the use of technology and economies of scale in kind of our management company and so forth. So it's something that definitely hurts, and it's something to be cognizant about.
With so much new supply in the works or about to be completed, how do you differentiate your developments?
I think that there is a tremendous ability with really smart design to differentiate products. I think that when there was less supply, developers were being held to a perhaps less stringent standard in terms of the level of design, the quality and thoughtfulness of design, and that doesn't necessarily equate to a price tag. I think something that differentiates me as a developer is I actually come from an architecture background. So the built environment, context sensitivity, good design, figuring out the best interior designers to help differentiate the amenity spaces really is key. And I think that one thing that COVID proved to all of us, in addition to this great supply that we have, is the importance of good, smart design of the areas of the building outside of the units alone. So I think that there is more pressure in those areas. But I think with good, smart design, there's still the ability to do something special without breaking, the budget and also, setting one apart.
I look at it as the way we really think about differentiating ourselves is that we try to do that and really give a value proposition to our residents. We may not be the cheapest, we may not be the most expensive, we may not be the most luxurious, but we really try to stand out where we give the absolute best value dollar for dollar in terms of what they're paying versus what they're getting. We also try to really focus on a client-centric experience for our residents. We try to do that through dynamic locations, a lot of community involvement, so there's a lot of social interaction and so forth. We try to give, great amenities. We try to be close to mass transit, all the things that are important, because the one thing that we've learned, if we can keep our residents happy and we give them that sense of community, they're less likely to move out. And at the end of the day, what we really want is that tenant retention. We want to give them that sense of home, that sense of community, and that's what's really important, and that's what we try to differentiate ourselves on.
Can you tell us maybe where asking rents are starting at some of your projects?
We have one bedrooms that are probably very nice one bedrooms overlooking the city, just under $2,000. So we've got units, and then we've got two bedrooms that are about $2,400. Okay. So it really becomes a great opportunity for two roommates to have that kind of concepts.
I was just going to add that I think that one other special feature, at least from my front, is differentiation for me is also about about price point. And in my opinion, everybody in Miami traditionally has built really, really large units. Now with construction costs and a bunch of other factors, it's not always possible to do that. So a lot of my developments actually compress the size of the units a bit to create more efficiency. Ultimately, it allows the developer, to do well. It costs a little more to construct based upon the density, but ultimately, it allows us to sort of get a lot done and keep the price point down to the end user. So, that's kind of the proposition.
How has the tenant demographic changed just in the past few years?
Has it not?
Oh, no, has it?
I would say, we have seen kind of the return to urban environments, kind of, I always say everything kind of started in 9/11. It was back to that sense of community. I want to know who my neighbors are. So building apartments, especially in the multifamily sector, which is kind of where Jenny and I come from, they really started becoming amenitized. You wanted to make sure that they were highly amenitized. Like, for example, we created the first bark park in my Neo Lofts job up on the Miami River. Why? Because we realized that our clientele had dogs, and they didn't have kids, but they had dogs, and their dogs were their kids. And like that, we've kind of had this evolution. In a post-pandemic world, I would say there's been two big factors. The first is, I call it the age of Uber. So I think parking has really changed in how we address parking and parking needs for our residents, and how we want to be close to like mass transit or close to work and so forth. And I think probably the biggest thing, and I know Jenny and I agree on this, is the work from home phenomena. That has completely changed the way apartment living happens. Back in 2000, about 3.7% of the population worked from home. In 2020, before the pandemic, it was about 7% of the population. By 21, you have 18% of the population working from home. And today, McKinsey says that about 58% of the population has the ability to at least work one day from home. So that has really had an impact in how you design your buildings. Do you add a second bedroom? Do you add a den? Do you add a focus room? Do you add a Zoom room? We've all been there on a Zoom call and the dogs are barking and you're trying to mute that thing and you're just trying to go over it. So again, it's addressing those needs. I would say that's probably one of the big design changes and one of the big trends that I've seen.
Yeah, the car ratio is amazing, the extent to which, you know, people have changed their general trends with cars in Miami. The folks who, you know, have their cars, I think the ratio in Wynwood and these types of areas is close to 0.5. So it's changed really quite dramatically. I think a lot of people just don't want the cost, but they want to live along this major new spine. I mean, it gets at what I think is the most exciting part of Miami now, which is, I think North Miami Avenue and sort of that stretch between Brickell and up by Design District has truly become like a neighborhood that's kind of woven together for the very first time. As I stood in front of 2000 North Miami Avenue, actually, you know, my site, which looked very, very different 2 years ago, it's just amazing, you know, to observe the presence, the fact that the retail, you know, really, you know, starts to have a presence and, you know, you feel safe and walkable. And I really think it's just the beginning of that kind of change for this area.
Where do you see opportunities for land, and are you looking for new sites?
I'm always looking. You know, I think that there hasn't necessarily been any major adjustments in Miami in terms of price point in land. You know, not as many transactions, but certainly still, you know, very, very interested in, you know, the right opportunity. And in particular, I think I'm pretty interested in deals that are OZ, that have other tax incentives. And, you know, the way that Miami has changed so dramatically, in particular arts and entertainment and some of the other areas that, you know, maybe were a little bit underutilized about back when the OZ maps were drawn a series of years ago, have now changed dramatically. So to me, that's, you know, a huge opportunity, and I would continue to pick that up for the right opportunity.
Are you looking anywhere, Lisa?
I'm absolutely always looking for opportunity. There's rarely a site that I can't find something beautiful about it. I have bought and built over pawn shops, coin laundries, garages, rent-a-cars, you name it, we will take it. That said, I mean, there's certain fundamentals that make sense. You know, at the end of the day, when you really go back to everything we're talking about, it still goes back to location, location, location. And that's whether it's in an urban market or a suburban market. Are you close to transit? Are you close to employment? Are you creating these new town centers? What is it that makes it special? And I continue to see opportunity. It doesn't have to be in the traditional sense of main and mean, but how can you create an opportunity? When we started on the Miami River, they said we were crazy, but we felt it was an alternative to kind of waterfront living, and it was kind of breaking that paradigm. Allapattah to us felt like, when we started with Allapattah, we said, you know, that's really kind of the belly button in the, you know, and kind of the hole in the body. You know, it's right at the center of everything that's going on. It's just kind of west of Wynwood. It's in the heart of the health district, which is the second largest health district. So it made a lot of sense. If you took a report at that time and said, oh, what's kind of the radius, it made absolutely no sense. But we knew if we built kind of quality housing around there, people would come. And more recently, we've done that with the Palmer Lake neighborhood. That's this forgotten pocket now, but you know, now we have Missy there, so now it's a whole different story. Now everybody knows where it is, but it's where Miami Freedom Park is going, and you know, we just bought on the Miami River tributary to build 1,350 apartments there. So again, what do they all have in common? Well located, close to mass transit. In the case of Palmer, it's right next to the Miami Intermodal Center. So we've got rail, we've got bus, we've got planes, we've got cars, we've got feet, we've got bicycles. You name it, you can get there.
And Lissette, you recently teased plans for a project in Central Florida. What led you to, and that's your first development outside of Miami, right? So what led you to do that?
I mean, I love Miami. I am born and raised in Miami. My accent gives me away wherever I go that I'm a Miami girl. That said, I also happen to love Florida. I am a proud Floridian. In 2017, with the Tax Cut Jobs Act, we started getting about 330,000 people moving here with the wealth migration. It kind of got exacerbated in the pandemic. We started having about 380,000 people. And if you start looking at trends, you continue to have about 300,000 people average projected between 24 and 28. So Florida in and of itself continues to have incredible growth. That being said, Central Florida to me was attractive because it added another affordable opportunity to give residents an affordable option that is within Florida. It's well located, centrally located, lots of jobs are coming there, very few natural disasters, not very prone to hurricanes and so forth. So from that standpoint, it just really made a lot of sense for us, and that's why it was just a natural expansion of kind of what we were doing here.
I also think we should address something that's kind of obvious, where the two of you are both female developers who founded your own firms in a very heavily male-dominated industry. Can you speak to any challenges that you've had and how you've kind of overcome them?
For me, it's always been an opportunity. Since I was a kid, I always was challenged with no's and things that didn't seem possible and inviting, and always kind of trudged forward. When I was 17, I got a job at NASA because I was interested in being an engineer, and then I got a lot of no's after I went to architecture school and tried to break into the industry. So I think it's just about putting your head down and kind of plowing forward and being result oriented. And I would also say, and you touched upon public-private partnerships, which is only semi-related, but I've always had a strong sensitivity to the built environment and a strong desire to really work with municipalities in a really sensitive way to create things that were very context sensitive. And so I've only seen it as an asset, being really, really sensitive, working together to build things, great and get it done.
When I got the notes to this panel, I was like, "You're kidding me, right? You found the two women developers? Is this by design, by coincidence?" I mean, it was comical because normally either Jenny or I are both the only women in the room, oftentimes. So it's clearly the elephant in the room. That said. To me, being a woman has been an incredible opportunity. It gives me the opportunity to be different. I look different when I walk in a room. I think there's expectations as to what I'm going to be based on what I look like, based on the accent I have, based on my background. And the fact is that I am just as good and deserve to be there just as much as the guy next to me. I actually owe everything I am to that lady sitting there over there, which is my mom, who ever since elementary school, would tell me, so, and, when I would say, oh, this boy did this, okay, and so to this day, I don't see myself as any different than any guy. I mean, I have no problem telling someone, stop, and I'm the one that writes the checks, and that's why. That's not to say, that I haven't been threatened, that I haven't been told to be quiet, that I haven't been told how cute I am, how I remind them of my granddaughter and everything else. But I always say the biggest challenge that I've probably had is motherhood. At the end of the day, I'm still a mom. I'm a mom of 3 girls, ages 16, 17, and 18. And if I can survive that, I definitely can survive any construction guy in the world. But what's always interesting is my kid's school. Like, my phone starts ringing, and it's, oh, I'm sorry, your daughter is late from lunch today. Okay. And I'm like, oh, your daughter doesn't feel well. Well, why don't you call the other emergency contact, because he's 50% responsible for her existence. And so now my daughter's school knows, don't call that lady, she's kind of crazy. But that's just the reality. So I would say motherhood is probably trying to balance both has been the biggest challenge, but it's also been the most rewarding. And really what I hope is that, to kind of every little girl that's out there and every woman, Miami's the greatest place to do it. If it allowed a young female, Hispanic, first-generation American, first-generation college student to do what I get to do, what Jenny gets to do, they can do anything. So we hope that by leading by example, more women are here. And one day we have a panel of 5 women, not just 2.
Next year, definitely. All right. Well, thank you both. I am going to open it up to the audience for questions. If anybody has any questions, we'll get a mic over.
Not even one measly question? Like, pretend.
We have another one. Okay, now we have more questions. So,
There you go.
Lots of questions. We'll get to as many as we can.
Hi, Blanca Villarello from the Miami Beach Chamber of Commerce. First of all, congratulations, amazing work. And my question is, I see that you are like more North Miami construction, but in South Beach, we are going to face a big problem for workers, employees, housing. Can you see something coming, or how can we address that issue? Because obviously it's in a small place, a lot of business, a lot of development coming, a high demand for labor, and very expensive rents.
I can answer that. Well, if you want to cross the Julia Tuttle Causeway on Northwest 36, we have a fantastic project that opens up, and it's only about a 10-minute drive, and that's Alapata 14, and that is for the workforce housing, and it was very much designed for the Miami Beach. Miami Beach has a lot of tourism and hospitality and so forth, and unfortunately, sometimes, as much as you may want to live, your land basis doesn't allow you, so we try to build as close. That said, I know kind of affordability and workforce housing is at the top of the radar of Miami Beach. I am not a Miami Beach expert. I don't build on the beach. But again, I think it's something that's very much at the forefront of everybody. And until then, I've got a great project for for people to come to.
okay, next question.
I have one over here.
Okay, we have one over here.
Hi, thanks. This is amazing. And I just want to address a question to Jen. Having studied architecture in undergraduate and graduate school, and now in the development seat, working with architects, how's that?
Oh, it's a great honor, and it's wonderful to see you. I always thought that I wanted to be an architect, and then I realized in my third year of architecture school that I wanted to figure out where the loading dock went, and at Harvard that was not the right question to be asking. So I soon moved into to development. But truth be told, I think that being at the head of the table with a series of consultants has really taught me through my current role working independently, as well as my many years working with the Kushner family, about the integrity of your team and always being respectful and kind to your team. I think being an architect is very challenging at times. The developer, you may spend a long time trying to design something which then in a single swoop gets value engineered by the developer. So we have to have a tremendous amount of respect for our teams. I think we have to be firm, and then there also has to be a balance. And leadership is always a challenge, and something that I'm always learning and trying to improve.
Victoria. Sorry.
We have one there.
And there's someone over there, I think that was back.
Thank you. This question is for Jen. As it relates to, you said about going over 12-story, the prices get more expensive. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Sure, absolutely. Really there are a couple of different sort of height points at which the thresholds of cost increase tremendously, and really that relates also to the different subcontractors and the pools of the people that you go out to that are kind of at different price points, have different skills and things like that. But what we have an 8-story, we have a 12-story, and then we have a 24-story. A deal that you underwrite as as 12 stories cannot easily be translated in terms of price per square foot to be a taller one. So, that's another one of the limitations of why, simply plopping more density on a site doesn't necessarily doesn't necessarily work. But hopefully we'll see some improvement in those costs in the new year, which will allow for some of those taller projects to feel a little bit more palatable.
We have one more over there, I think.
Yes, hi. Thank you both so much. It's a pleasure to see women developers. My question would be if you had any kind of tangible advice that one could take to perhaps transition non-traditionally into development, for taking transferable skills, particularly, I speak for myself when I say I'm at a major global firm, and perhaps taking those skills and translating that and getting into development. I hear a lot of times people talk about the traditional route. I never did anything traditionally in my life. And the more I meet investors and developers, the more I see that it is possible to take a non-traditional route. So from perspective from you both, I would love to hear that.
Sure. I mean, I think everybody answers questions based upon their own experience, so forgive me for doing that. But I think that the best way to transfer into development is actually to go work for a municipality. For me, one of the most kind of fruitful moments in my career was spending 3 years working for the New York City Economic Development Corporation under Mayor Bloomberg when lots of great projects were getting done. And I could truly see how the public and the private sector worked so closely together. And I think a job like that really paves the way to have a deeper understanding of entitlements process and how a job gets done. So that would be my word of wisdom.
And I guess I took more of kind of the ground up. I started working for someone as a developer, and he ended up being an incredible mentor. I started my career at the Related Group under George Perez. I actually vacuumed floors, I cleaned kitchens, I did everything getting units ready for move-in. But that hard work actually was seen. I ended up being president at Related. I worked my way up to president, and the first, I guess, and only woman George had as a president. So I went that kind of non-traditional route. And then when you want to go off on your own, I always tell everybody, start small. Is it a townhouse that you want to build? Is it a duplex? Is it something small and scalable? I don't expect anybody to go and build a 200-unit building out of the gate because there's probably going to be no lender that's going to build it. So unless your dad is Jeff Bezos and is going to, kind of fund you, it's going to be hard to do that. So, but I would say with a small bank, may be able to believe in the duplex. And then part of doing that, and it's always something that I do, I'm probably still like the cheapest person, I live in my house that I've never moved out of. I bought out my lease when it was time. I refused to get a new lease. Why? Because by living that kind of life, I'm able to reinvest back in my projects. I'm able to put that back into my projects. And I think that makes a big difference, knowing that my personal expenses are very much covered so I can take more risk in my professional life.
We have a question over here.
Thank you, Lissette and Jenny, for your just being you. It is so inspirational. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so just a few weeks ago, I was at the IMN event, and many institutional investors were saying that they were going to slow down on development equity and put their money more into the higher rates because just lending made more sense than investing from an equity standpoint. So are you seeing and the other consensus was, hey, we're not doing development, we're slowing down, we're not doing any development. So are you seeing a tightening of equity in your deals and an inability to underwrite with the cost of supplies and the cost of the rates? You mentioned it, but I just kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, you absolutely are seeing that. You are seeing the size of the market decrease because of where rates are. Debt. It makes sometimes more sense to just go onto the debt side rather than the equity side of the cap stack. That said, there's still, you just have to think of non-traditional equity sources. Is it more the family offices? Is it more the patient capital? What are the ways that you're looking at that? And then, most deals are structured on a promote. So maybe the promotes that worked 2-3 years ago are a little bit different, and you have to give more to your LP equity partners to entice them. So it's really about structuring. People still want to come to Miami. People still need to place their equity. They still need to put their money. It is a little bit harder, and there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that I have seen, a change even from 22 to 23.
We have one more, I think.
Thank you, girls, for your explanation. So, where being a multifamily developer, there's always this question when you start a project between doing a condo development or a multifamily development. So, what would be your advices, always to pros and cons between multifamily or rental or condo development?
I'm looking to be a long-term holder of assets, so for me, the multifamily route makes more sense. I also don't know that I necessarily have the stomach for having to, get exactly the timing right on condo jobs. So, it's kind of been my training ground and where I feel comfortable sticking with, and I feel so comfortable with it that a lot of my projects actually, I'm happy to see other people building office and other typologies, but I'll just stick to what I know I'm good at.
Yeah, and I actually started my career on the condo side. My first few jobs, New Lofts, New Verca, Wind, a lot, those were condo jobs, but if you know me, I eat, breathe, and drink what I do. I absolutely love every second of every detail. I'm not an architect, but I'm a great closet architect. I think I'm an architect. I pretend to be one. And so I put my heart and soul into these jobs. And I always say it's like you have this baby and you spend all this time nurturing it, and then you deliver the building and you turn it over to this condo association. And on the best day, you just no longer have your baby. On the worst day, they're trying to get your head, for something. So, there's just a lot more liability on that. But I actually think about it a little bit in terms of what Jenny says. I think, by doing multifamily, if you keep it, I'm a long-term holder, I play long, and legacy, I think if you keep it, you have far more impact in the communities you serve. So now you're able to have that kind of, are the sidewalks good? Are the street lights? Are the parks? What's going on? Whereas I think in the condo world, you don't get to have the kind of impact that you do on the multifamily. So for that reason, I am a big believer, lover of kind of multifamily long.
All right, great. Well, thank you both so much. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.
Thank you.